In today's episode of Today in World War II, December 18th, Japanese break through the British defense lines in Hong Kong. The United States submarine has a pretty darn good day in the Philippine Sea against the Japanese. The Germans' Ardennes offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, starts to slow because of an American secret weapon. And finally, the American Third Fleet stupidly sails into a typhoon. Let's get started, okay? So on December 18th, 1941, the Japanese hit the oil refineries in the northern part of Hong Kong Island. It filled the air with thick black smoke. In the meantime, a combination, a pincer attack of 3,500 Japanese troops on the one side of the Lei Yui Channel, and then another 4,000 would follow in a different pincer attack. They were able to break through the British defenses. They overwhelmed them, and the massacre started then. They hadn't taken Hong Kong completely yet. That's still to be covered in a later episode in this series. But the coastal battery that they overran, that had been helping to hold them off a little bit anyway with their heavy guns, it was overwhelmed. And the Japanese immediately murdered all 30 prisoners of war that had surrendered. So, this was in the very first part of the war. The Allied troops still counted on or hoping that the Japanese would abide by the Geneva Convention. And this next 6 months, where they ran rampant before the United States could, get their poop together and stop them off of Midway and in the Solomon Islands, they pretty much did what they want, and what they wanted was pretty bad when it came to prisoners, because as I've explained in previous videos, their insane code of Bushido meant that if a warrior, a enemy, surrendered, he immediately lost all honor and was beneath them, and they could do anything they wanted to that person because there was without honor. According to their beliefs, the enemy should fight to the death like they did, and that anything less than that was deserving of contempt and death. So, yeah, the Allies started getting familiar more and more with what waited them if they had the unfortunate fate of being captured by the Japanese. Uh, Going to be very quick here. Please subscribe to my video, or to my channel, I mean, and click on the bell so you get notified whenever it drops. So that way, every day when I record a new video and post it, you're going to see it. Thanks. On December 18th, 1943, the United States submarine USS Grayback had a pretty good day on patrol out in the Philippine Sea. Just to give you an idea of the Philippine Sea and its geography, if you did like a Bermuda Triangle type thing, you've got the Philippines on the left, you've got the Mariana Islands, Guam and Saipan, and you've got over here to Taiwan. Lots of enemy shipping there. It's a very fertile ground for American submarines to operate. They did with great success. As I've said, the part of the war and the unit or the uh, weapons class in the Pacific that gets the least amount of press and least amount of credit for their contributions to the war was the American Submarine Service, the Silent Service, as they were called. And they starved the Japanese by, without much fanfare, sinking and sinking and sinking their merchant ships and strangling them from oil, gas, natural resources, and so on and so forth. All that was on its way to the home islands, and by the end of the war, they couldn't hardly function. Thank you to the American Submarine Service. In this case, the Grayback attacked, and it sank an escort destroyer and a freighter, and it also damaged other ships. So good for the Grayback and its ability to take it to the enemy, where they would be hurt the most, which was the merchant ships. And I would like for you, no pun intended, to like this video and leave a comment. As always, I keep emphasizing this because it's true. The best way for me to grow my channel is for you to like this video and comment because the algorithm will show it to more people. Thank you. On December 18th, 1944, the German offensive in the Ardennes forest, the Battle of the Bulge, had gone pretty smoothly for the Germans up to this date. However, as the Americans reorganized and realized that this was a heavy offensive and this just wasn't some probing attack, they started getting their you know what together. And this was the first time in the war they started to use a secret invention that had to do with how they shelled the enemy, and it was devastatingly effective. You may have heard of TOT, artillery salvos, which means time on target, but it also meant that they could use secret proximity fuses that would mean that these shells would not explode on the ground upon impact. They would explode, they would have an air burst where they would explode before they hit, which meant that there was just a shower of shrapnel. It was devastatingly effective against infantry that wasn't dug. Even if it was dug in, they didn't have much top cover, and they could still get eviscerated by shrapnel from these things. And so, not only did it have the physical effect of killing lots of exposed infantry, but it also had a devastating effect on them psychologically, and it really let's say, demoralize them and disincentivize them to attack maybe as fearlessly as they might have before. And what was funny is because typical Americans, a lot of local commanders didn't wait to get the go-ahead from high command to do this. They had started using these fuse proximity shells before that, under the idea of, well, you know what? We know what's going on the ground here, and we have this available. We're going to use it to save American lives and bully for them, right? And then finally, on December 18th, 1944, stupidly, Admiral Halsey, who was the admiral of the American Third Fleet, the most powerful fleet in the American arsenal in the Pacific that had the bulk of the United States carriers, battleships, cruisers, so on and so forth, knew there was a typhoon ahead of them, and rather than divert around it, stupidly decided to go right through. And well, let's put it this way, okay? Imagine how hard it would be to survive a typhoon in a big ship like an aircraft carrier or a battleship. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to try to weather out a typhoon in a destroyer. Well, three destroyers didn't make it, and 790 sailors died for no reason whatsoever. You know, I'm a big fan of Admiral Halsey. He was the commander of the Third Fleet at this time. And I think that when he was named to be the admiral in charge of the Solomon Islands theater during Guadalcanal, I thought it was an inspired choice. I think Halsey was very good. He worked very well with MacArthur. There was a lot of egos, between Nimitz and MacArthur, and Halsey did very well to defend the Navy's interests, but still work with the Army under MacArthur. Because despite the fact we were at war with the frickin' Japanese, there was always another war behind the lines that was between the Navy and the Army. And Halsey did a very good job with that. And I always said that, I thought Halsey did a good job until 44, when maybe he was showing his age. I don't know. But as we'll get to later in our series, when the Battle of Lady Gulf happens, he made critical errors that left the invasion fleet wide open for attack and only just incredible bravery of the destroyers covering escort carriers, kept the Japanese from totally destroying the invasion fleet because he got lured to some wild goose chase. He also made a very bad mistake of taking his fleet into a typhoon There was no military reason to do so. He could have maneuvered around it. He could have waited, but no, he went right into it because he was obstinate. His nickname was Bull-Halsey. And so I think this was a disastrous decision, as the Lady Gulf decision was. So I believe that this tarnishes his legacy as an admiral and in what how his performance in the war. Now, I'm just some guy, right? I'm just some person that loves World War II. I'm not a historian, I'm an amateur historian, but this is my channel and this is my take, and you can accept it or not. I think that under the circumstances, Admiral Spruance got criticized for not being more aggressive at Midway. He got criticized a lot for not being more aggressive when he commanded the Fifth Fleet, which was the same. It was called the Fifth Fleet when he commanded it. Was the Third Fleet when Halsey had it. It was the same ships, but when he commanded the Fifth Fleet in the Battle of the Mariana Sea, the Battle of the Philippine Sea during the Saipan and Tinian and Guam invasion. He was criticized as being not aggressive enough to go after the Japanese fleet. I think under the circumstances, I'd rather have Spruance, who was more, maybe a little bit less aggressive, but he never lost sight of the prize, was to make sure to cover for the invasion. And Halsey lost sight of that. His blood got up, he wanted the glory, and he got lured away, and it was almost a disaster, like I said. So that was what happened on December 18th during World War II. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to having you watch my video tomorrow.